welcome to the Irish Examiner Cheltenham Festival 2022 preview. I'm probably the only person here who needs an introduction. I'm Tommy Lyons, the racing correspondent for the Irish Examiner. The other names are luminaries in the racing world. Ruby Walsh has been with the Examiner longer than I have. He's ridden a few more Cheltenham Festival winners than I have too. His insight for the week is invaluable. I even heard at the recent Willie Mullins press day that his knowledge of the track is so important still to all of Willie's horses going over to the Cheltenham Festival. So welcome back, Ruby.
Hello, Tommy. How are you?
Not too bad. Mick Fitzgerald is with us, another leading jockey who's won pretty much like Ruby has won almost everything that has to be won in racing. He was with us last year. Great insight from across the water. Mick, you're obviously still very much involved with Nicky Henderson's yard, and it's a yard through difficult times which has maintained its level and has kind of flown the flag for the UK Challenger. So we'll probably get to that over the next hour or so. Good to see you again, Mick.
Lovely to see you, Tommy.
And here a man that certainly doesn't need any introduction, Gary O'Brien. He's what Matt Chapman used to like to call the voice of Ireland, and he's with Racing TV now. You know him well. He's done a bit of stuff for the Irish Examiner in the past, and I think probably we'll probably see a bit more next week and maybe into the future. So Gary, very welcome to the Cheltenham Festival preview.
Thanks, Tommy. Good to be with you.
Let's keep it quite obvious, lads. We're gonna go through the 4 days in order. We'll probably spend a little bit more time on Tuesday, maybe even slightly on Wednesday. They seem to be traditionally the best of the cards, or maybe where the punters are going to get their few quid, hopefully. Let's start with what is the best race. For me, most years it's the best race because you see potential superstars, but you also often get great races. Ruby, we'll start with you. It's the Supreme Novices Hurdle is a race you've had loads of success in the past, and this looks like as good a renewal as there has been for quite some time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks really deep, Tommy. Obviously, Willie is undecided yet whether he's going to run Sir Gerhard or Dysart Dynamo. I think it's fairly obvious they'll be split. One will run here and one will go to the Ballymore. But Nicky Henderson has two big runners in John Bond and Constitution Hill. Gordon Elliott has Mighty Potter, and Willie also has Kilcrut and maybe Statement to back up either Dysart Dynamo or Sir Gerhard. It'll be a brilliant race. There looks to be enough of pace in it to make sure that it's going to be run end to end. And I just have a feeling, though, Tommy, it's going to be an absolute beano for the bookmakers because I think you'll find a lot of people's opinion are going to be split on this race, and everybody's going to be divided up as to which one they fancy. Maybe that'll generate value. I think John Bond has been slightly overlooked because of what people perceive to be an only an all right run at Haydock, but I think he's a hell of a good racehorse. I would prefer him slightly of Nicky's too, but Fitzy bring us up to date on that. Of Willie's, like, I've never ridden Dysart Dynamo. I have ridden Sir Gerhard. I think he's a very good horse. He's a fast horse. He'll be an easy horse to ride. But I like the noises that Patrick Mullins is making about Kilcrut, and I wouldn't put anybody off him.
Yeah, his start to this season wasn't particularly hectic for Kilcrut, but that even though it wasn't a particularly competitive race the last day, it was certainly a step in the right direction. I just wonder, it's another big step forward for him, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is a big step forward for him, but we fancied him going there last year. The bumper was a very tactical affair. It didn't go his way, but I know that the people involved with him in Close Sutton are really happy with him.
Mick, we'll go to you. Nicky Henderson said this has been a great race for Nicky down through the years. He has two real potential stars in it as well. This is deep.
Yeah, it's look, this morning, Thursday before Cheltenham is the traditional schooling morning for all the Cheltenham horses. Both John Bon and Constitution Hill school this morning, and both were very impressive, just what you wanted to see. But it was quite interesting watching Constitution Hill schooling this morning. It's nice ground over here. Like it would only have been good ground on the schooling ground this morning. And watching him school, I saw him. He was electric. I thought, the only concern that I'd have with him is that both of his wins have been in very soft ground. How is he going to cope if we only get good to soft ground in the opening race where they go a real end-to-end gallop? Watching him this morning schooling, he won't have any problem with that. Like he really was impressive. Look, you don't know, the form stacks up to nothing really because the horses behind him haven't really advertised it, but he can do no more than win. John Bond, the worry with John Bond is the first race, there's been no crowds for 2 years. there's going to be a massive crowd, and the buzz around Cheltenham before that opening race is going to be electric. And I just worry that will upset John Bon. You know, there's bound to be a false start, because the opening race, there'll be so much anticipation. That's not going to suit him either. And that would be the only concern I have. Like, he looked really good schooling this morning. Everything's gone to plan for him. You know, it's all systems go. But I just worry that opening race on the opening day, it might just be a bit much for him.
Have you any concern with Constitution Hill that the Tolworth hurdle seems to be a very bad trial? I know people go on about it quite a bit. Is it maybe because the timing of it? Is it because it's generally run on heavy ground? Is it Sandown form? Is there something specific about it that you think maybe it hasn't translated into Supreme Novices hurdle winners?
Well, I think stats are there. You know, you can't ever get away from them because they are facts. But at the same time, there's always one that comes along and bucks the trend. And everything that I saw of him and everything I saw of his homework as well, you know, I'm not going to desert him now. The only thing I would say is he's not been to Cheltenham. That's the question mark. Whereas the likes of Sir Gerhard and Kilcrook, they've been there before. And they've got rosettes from being placed or winning there. And there's no substitute for that.
Yeah, like what you said about John Bon is right. I don't think you can afford to be 99% in this race. This is far too good, far too deep. Constitution Hill, I love the first day. He seemed to quicken twice, which is exceptional in any horse. Quicken twice to win a race or to put it to bed. To my mind, I'd be falling that on the side of Constitution Hill, even though this could go any one of 4, 5, 6 ways. I know, Ruby, before I go to Gary, you think that Mighty Potter might even be a player, I think, at a price. It certainly might be overlooked.
Yeah, I think he is overlooked. I think he was unlucky in the Royal Bond. He put that to bed at Christmas when he won. I think the strongly run race will suit him. And look, Gordon Elliott campaigns his horses slightly different to Willie Mullins in that they peak at Christmas and then have a break and slightly out of sight, out of mind. And I think a lot of Gordons can get overlooked into Cheltenham because you haven't seen them in a while. But that doesn't mean they won't be peaked. And I think Mighty Potter is a great each-way price.
Yeah, I think Gordon's record tells us that. And also, it is the first race. Bookies tend to give concessions, and they might give you 4 or 5 places on the day. I think if you're getting Mighty Potter in at double figures, it's probably a sneaky bet. Gary, have you a strong opinion on this, or are you like the rest of us kind of picking one side and hoping we're right?
Something like that, I'd say, Tommy. I think for a long time, I was struggling to maybe see any sort of value at the prices. I think it's such a strong race, like in an average year, maybe any one of 5 or 6 of these would be up to winning a Supreme Novice Hurdle. But you kind of stole my thunder there with that last question to Ruby. I think Mighty Potter is the one I started to come round to in recent days, Tommy. He's probably a little bit unlucky not to be unbeaten. The Royal Bond Novice Hurdle at Ferryhouse didn't go his way at all, and he still went very close to winning that. Won at Leopardstown last time out. Fair enough, that was a kind of muddling sort of a race as well. But you mentioned there will be extra places available on the day. There'll certainly be at least 4 places, and I'd find it very hard to see this horse out of the first 4. If Sir Gerhard did pitch up here, he'd be the most likely winner to me. But I think in his absence, I'd expect him to go for the Ballymore. I think it just opens it up that bit more. Dysart Dynamo is a very good horse. I've been impressed by Constitution Hill as well. But I think if you're looking at it from a punter's point of view, Mighty Potter at 8, maybe even 10 to 1 with the extra places, that's the way to go for me.
Yeah, it's a cracking contest. He's a gorgeous type of a horse, isn't he, for the future as well? Like there's a lot of horses here, and as you should always have anyway in a Supreme Novices Hurdle. I mean, if they don't win here, it doesn't mean it's going to crab their prospects for the future. There's some serious looking animals that I think we'll probably hear about for plenty of years to come.
That's exactly it. I mean, I was looking down the list there last night. I think you could almost go down to the 9th, 10th horse in the betting, Tommy, and there's a horse that bring on the night, Willie Mullins, who was 20-25 to 1 that hacked up in a maiden hurdle at Naas recently. He could be a very smart horse too. So it looks very, very strong. But as I say, I think Mighty Potter will be thereabouts, and at the very least, he'll give you a good run for your money. It's not a race I'd be steaming into now straight off the bat, but I think he'll run very well.
I think we're a little bit divided over it. I think Mick and myself are with Constitution Hill, and yourselves are with some of the Irish horses. And last year, okay, we have to touch on it without maybe going into it in too much detail. It's been talked about at length over the last year. The score in what we call the Presbytery Cup. We know we don't like to call it a team game, but there are implications. 23-5 last year was ridiculous. I might even end up predicting that the UK will win the first 2 races, perhaps. But I think it's not going to swing back very much in the UK direction very quickly. It's taken a long time for Irish dominance to develop to what it was last year. And even if we can't quite repeat that, I think we can go close. I think that's the type of the strength and depth over the course of the week. Would that be fair, Gary?
I think it is very fair, Tommy. And the other thing is the handicaps this year, the way the British handicappers played things, the home trained horses have been dropped that bit quicker. The Irish horses are still getting the extra few pounds on top. But the upshot of that is that most of the handicaps, the Irish look like they're going to dominate them. I mean, you even look at that Ultimate Handicap chase on the first day. That's a race that's usually a banker for a home win on the coupon. But this time around, I was looking at it yesterday, I think almost half the field are going to be Irish trained horses. I actually reckon on the first day, if a British trained horse doesn't win the opener, I could actually see it being a whitewash for the Irish trained horses on day one.
Yeah, I think so. I know. Look, I say I'm predicting maybe perhaps that it will be a UK winner on the very first race. But I mean, that may not happen, and all of a sudden it could just steamroll from there. Mick, what's the feeling on the other side of the Irish Sea? Is there concern, or is it just kind of drive on and hope?
Well, there's concern, but we're driving on and hoping anyway, Tommy. You know, we have no choice. And I think, you know, it's amazing. You look at, like, Willie Mullen's going to take 50 plus horses. Gordon Elliott's going to take 50 plus horses. Henry de Bromhead, had a great year last year. He's going to have a load of horses going. So already there's at least 110 Irish trained horses who will all go there with some sort of chance. You know, like it's a huge Irish contingent, but it just means that the UK based trainers, the UK based owners, they've got to up their game. They've got to get in before the Irish are buying the horses. You know, they're there to be bought by everybody. You've just got to get the raw materials quicker. And I think that's the way it's got to be. And, you know, it means if you're a seller of a racehorse, you're in a very strong position at the moment. But I think the opening race, we have a very strong chance of getting a home win here for the UK. But I think the second race, the Arkle, is I think where we've got a very strong chance. I think if we don't win one of the first two races, then I think there won't be much wind in the UK train sail. I can tell you that.
Mick, you touched on the Arkle. We might as well move along to it. You're quite strong on the home team here. What is it that excites you?
Look, I've been really impressed with Edward Stone. He was a 150 rated hurdler. He was always a little bit keen in his races and didn't quite get home. And, you know, that was counting against him. Whereas over fences, he's grown up a little bit as well. You know, he's looked really, really good. He's a very strong traveller. Like Ruby will tell you, to ride in races like the Arkle, you need a horse that's able to hold its position with tactical pace. He's got that. He's a very good jumper. He's looked really good in all his wins. I thought he might get beat at Warwick last time because the track might just be a little quick for him. Not a bit of it. And I think Cheltenham's going to really suit him. And I think he'll win the Arkle. I think the Irish horses maybe just fall a little bit below the standard that we've come to expect in the last few years. You know, when you look at the likes of Shishkin and Altior winning the Arkles, I don't think there is a Shishkin and an Altior in there this year.
I think that's probably a fair comment. And just to touch on it, somebody was mentioned the other day that Alan King has a particularly poor record with favourites at the Cheltenham Festival. I think it's upwards of 15 and no winner. Now, he's obviously had winners at Cheltenham Festival that go back to the good days of Viper Estetas, My Way to Sols and Catch It and the like. He's had plenty of winners. He has a very, very poor record with favourites. I think that might put a few people off. But I understand where you're coming from. He's looked exceptionally good, Edward Stone. Ruby, can we keep this race?
I'd be worried, Tommy. I think Edward Stone, like Mick has said, has been very good. I think a lot of our real fancy ones here are 5-year-olds. No 5-year-old has won it since Viper Steady in 2006 when he got a £5 allowance. They don't get that allowance anymore. And then you're down to Blue Lord. He looks slightly lucky to beat Riviera de Tel at Leopardstown. He's better off with the weights against her, but he was going to be well beaten when he fell at the last in the Supreme Novices Hurdle last year by Appreciated. So, look, I think it's complete role reversal in that it's one English horses against a clatter of Irish ones, but I think the English horse could be the best one.
Jerry, give us some hope.
I think there's plenty of hope for the Irish horses, Tommy. I mean, the favourite is a very good horse, Edward Stone, impossible to knock. He's coming into this on a real roll, jumps very well. My gut feeling, though, is that there might be something in there to beat him. And I know the Irish horses have looked maybe as though there mightn't be a great deal to choose between quite a few of them. So from that point of view, I'd be more inclined to maybe look outside the top three in the Irish Arkle, Blue Lord, Riviere de Tel, and St. Sam. I think if they meet again on a different day, it's almost like throwing three balls up in the air. So I'd maybe look more towards something like Houghton Couleur, who fell in that race, but went off at quite a short price and won very well at Leopardstown previously. Or maybe one of Henry de Bromhead's two, Cur Sublime and Magic Days, though just have it in my head that neither of those maybe might be the strongest finishers. So I don't know. From a punter's point of view, I think I maybe turn bookmaker, maybe take on Edwardstone here. He's the worthy favourite, but I just feel maybe there'll be something in there to beat him. And if you look down the list, I think the next 7, 8 are all Irish trained. So if he doesn't win, I'd say it will be coming over this way.
And this is a product of what we were talking, the results of the last Cheltenham Festival, the overall results of Irish versus English, if you want to call it that way, is the fact that if Edwardstone underperforms, we'll probably win it. So, but we've got a pile of them in there, and that is the thing. We've got so many good horses traveling over. Whereas I think at the moment, which I could never have envisaged 6-7 years ago, I couldn't have seen this ever happening. But it should be the other way around. We should be, in past history where we go over there with a couple of them, and if one of them underperforms, we're in trouble. But it seems to have swung the other way for the moment. I'm sure the wheel will keep on turning, and there'll be swings and roundabouts as we go on through, but it will take a little bit of time. Ruby, Houghton Couleur is an interesting horse. Is he going for this? It just he seems to be no interest in backing him. Particularly on the exchanges at the moment. It was significant. I felt that there was a good bit of support for him the last day, even though he fell. There had been good support against Blue Lord and Riviere de Tel in the race. How good is he? Is he potentially an Arkle winner?
He could be. His age would be the concern for the novice chasers for me as a 5-year-old. 5-year-olds do win the races, but it's a difficult year. And he schooled well since he fell. He ran really well in last year's Triumph when he was second to Calixios. On his first start, third, Adagio was second. He was in front of Zana here. It's a pretty strong run, and I wouldn't put anybody off backing him each way. But the ace is the English horse. You're looking for a result here with one of the lesser Irish maybe beating him. Okay, so you're yourself and Mick with Edwardstone, and Gary, you think we have plenty of hope. I think it's a wide open race. I can't be against Blue Lord. Probably maybe slightly favour Houghton Couleur in the hope that he might give a clean round jumping, and he does look a nice talent. We'll very quickly skip through the ultimate handicap chase. Have you anything that you like in that, Mick? Or maybe Gary, you said you've had a good look at this race. Is there something that jumps out?
The one who caught my eye, Tommy, was Schoolboy Ayres, the horse that won the Paddy Power chase at Leopardstown. He is entered up later on in the week in the Kim Muir as well. Maybe that's the way he'll go. But I thought it was interesting he was left in this. He should get in down at the bottom of the weights. He wasn't actually hammered for winning the Paddy Power at Leopardstown. And I think he's one of the Irish horses that's on the same mark over in Britain as he is at home. So to me, there's a fair bit more upside to him. I thought he did very well to win that race at Leopardstown. He plenty of ground to make up swinging in. Might have been value for a little bit more than the bare margin.
Tommy, I definitely go with that. But I'm like Gary obviously knows better than me, but I just got the impression there seemed to be more support for him going for the Kim Muir, Gary. Would that be right or not?
That could easily happen, Mick. And obviously, I know if you go for the Kim Muir, you might have Derek O'Connor to ride him. But I think he's JP's only runner or only remaining entry for the Ultimate. And they do have Glenn Lowe, I think, entered for the Kim Muir. So maybe they might split them up. But if he pitched up here, wherever he pitched up, actually, I'd be pretty interested in him.
Yeah, because Gary made a really good point. Like a lot of the Irish horses, when the handicapper reassessed them, I was actually at the weights unveiling the other day at Cheltenham. And, they were saying, oh, well, we did this and we did that. But actually with Schoolboy Ayres, he's £9 higher than when winning the Paddy Power. But a lot of the Irish horses have gone up at least 6, 7 anyway, having not won. So, he actually looks like he's got in lightly.
Almost unpenalised. That Duty might be a weak enough favourite in this race. Would that be unfair? He's 11 years of old. He's had a couple of runs at Cheltenham. He didn't really perform to the best at it. He's had his issues. Now, he does look well treated on old form of 144. Gary, would you?
Yeah. I think he's favourite, Tommy, because he has been well treated. He's actually a pound lower. I think he's the best treated Irish horse running there all week in the handicaps than he is at home. And he did win a big handicap last time, but that was over 3.5 miles. And I actually, mad though it sounds, it's a 3 mile, 1 furlong handicap chase. I think he might actually just get caught out for a little bit of toe around there. He seems an out and out stayer these days. And I just wonder whether he might maybe get a little bit too far back.
It's been a fantastic achievement actually to get him back to be winning good competitive handicaps, in fairness, by Gordon. Ruby, anything that interests you in the Ultimate?
No.
Let's start with you, Ruby Salt, for the champion hurdle. This is a cracking contest. There's real intrigue in this because, Honeysuckle is obviously the one to beat, but at least we have a bit of fresh blood here. Horses that she hasn't raced against before, who have that, or looked that they have the potential to possibly be champion hurdlers. That makes it a really, really good race. Are you siding with her, or are you going to take her on, Ruby?
I think she's rock solid, Tommy. 14 from 14. She's won slowly run races. She's won races where they go really quick. She's a good jumper. She's a serious turn of foot. Wherever Rachel Blackmore chooses to use that, she just has a furlong in her in every race where she puts the others to the sword, and then they never peg her back. She can win when Henry's horses are out of form. We saw her doing that in Punchestown last year. I think she's rock solid. Obviously, if fresh blood in Adagio, Tehipu and Appreciated, but I think they're more in the betting without market than taking her on straight. Appreciated was a very good winner of last year's champion hurdle, but to win a champion hurdle first time up, that's going to be a massive ask, having never ran in 12 months against a mare of Honeysuckle's caliber and having to give her £7. I think she is rock solid, and I know if I was going there to ride her, I wouldn't be too worried about how I'd sleep the night before.
Mick, if you were to pick, which one would you like to be on?
Oh, look, there's no way you wouldn't pick Honeysuckle. She's the one that you'd want. Like Ruby said, she's very solid. Look, the only concern that you might have is this win and run going to come to an end? It's got to end sometime. And I don't ever want to be talking about getting a horse beat. On what we've seen, of all the horses coming through, they've all got to up their game to beat her. I think you're looking at something for a bit of value to finish behind her, really. And like Epatante was third in the race last year. She's in very good form this year. She's in much better form than she was going into last year's champion hurdle. And, she finished third. So I think she's a little bit of value in the place market. But look, you want to see champions strut their stuff. And I think there'll be plenty of people who will be cheering for Honeysuckle. She didn't have the crowds to enjoy her last year. I think if she wins, nobody will begrudge her that.
I think Epatante is around about 5-1, Mick, in the without market. That's probably you're probably thinking that might be a bit of value.
Yeah, absolutely no doubt about it. Like I say, she won the Christmas hurdle this year. That form has been franked. Like Glory and Fortune came out and won the Betfair hurdle. The form looks strong, and I think she's a very solid alternative in that market.
I think there's one as well that we might I might get involved in, maybe in the E-Tray market or without market as well. But we'll let Gary go first. Gary, what do you like? Are you a big, obviously most of us are Honeysuckle fans, but I suppose when you try to nitpick or you want to try to get a very short price one beaten, I think maybe with our hearts, a lot of us don't want her to be beaten because she remains with a perfect record, and probably would be lovely to see her to continue.
That's it. I mean, everybody would love to see her win, Tommy, certainly from a neutral's perspective. But I think she's got a real rival this year in Appreciated. If he can just build a little bit on what he did in the Supreme Novices last year, I mean, that was a devastating performance. And we've seen Willie Mullins produce horses like Penn Hill and Cavega off these long absences to win big races at Cheltenham before. I think a lot will depend, Tommy, on what Honeysuckle turns up at Cheltenham. For me, in the Irish champion hurdle last year, she was absolutely brilliant. I thought that was probably one of the performances of the whole season in Ireland, and it was impossible to see her getting beaten at Cheltenham almost after that. Now she's a shorter price to win this year, and I didn't think she was as impressive winning at Leopardstown this time around as she was last year. Zanahiyr, I think, got within 6 odd lengths of her after making a really bad mistake at the first. So if Honeysuckle runs only to that sort of level at Cheltenham, I think that would give Appreciated a chance. Obviously, there's a strong possibility that she might be able to build on that and come back to the sort of form she showed at Cheltenham last year. But I just thought the Leopardstown run was a little bit below her best. And if that Honeysuckle turns up at Cheltenham, Appreciated has definitely got a chance.
And we're going to have to touch on some stage, I suppose, the form of Henry the Bromhead stable through the year was a small bit of a concern. You didn't quite know, to what level the horses were going to run. So maybe she was just in a bit of they were just coming out of a lull maybe at that stage.
It's possible. And I think it was only really in February, Tommy, that the strike rate started to go back up to something on par with the previous year. It was around about Christmas time. There were a few obvious disappointments around then. And there was obviously something up. I think Henry seemed to be scratching his head about it as well. So you have to factor that in. That's a distinct possibility that maybe she wasn't quite 100% at Leopardstown, but it did just offer a ray of hope, I think, for appreciated fans.
Ruby, can a horse like Honeysuckle, when the stable is under a little bit of a cloud, let's just say, when a horse runs to the level she did the last day and has a hard race, can it leave a mark? Can it leave a longer mark than if the stable was going well?
No, I think it's just a measure of how good they are. Tommy, I remember Big Bucks winning a World Hurdle, and I think he was Paul Nicholls' only winner at the meeting. The rest of them were on a little bit below par. The good ones can just win anyway, but they need to be exceptional, and I think that's what she is.
Oh, fair enough. I think that's fairly categoric. I like the idea of backing Zana here, maybe each way or each way without the favour. I think Zana here has a big run in him. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to beat Honeysuckle. She is exceptionally good. I hope she got continued her winning run. Let's be honest about it. The Tuesday is just so good. I mean, even we look onto the Mayor's Hurdle. I don't know if it's a vintage Mayor's Hurdle, but it's very, very competitive looking this year. Ruby, is there anything you like in that race? This is a race, obviously, Willie and yourself have had success in. It's just a terrific race, isn't it? You've had your moment.
And disaster as well. But I like the chance of Stormy Island. I think our Relkill hurdle was pretty solid. I'm not certain yet how good last year's Mayor's novice hurdle form was, and a lot of the ones ahead of her in the betting are coming from that race. Tell Me Something Girl and a few more of them. Top Burning Victory and Queen's Brook would both have improved from their run in a Quiviga hurdle at Punchestown a couple of weeks ago. I think it's an open contest, but Stormy Island's a backable each way price.
Yeah, I tell you what I actually quite like in the race is Queen's Brook. I think obviously she's been quite difficult to train and she's had her small issues, but if you go back to her Cheltenham bumper form here when she finished third to Fernie Hollow and Appreciated, was it? That sort of form is exceptional. Now, obviously she hasn't produced to that level since, but if Gordon's horses look like they're being teed up perfectly for as usual, I think for the Cheltenham Festival, the run behind Burning Victory the last day, she looked like she'd step up considerably from it. I think she's a real player around about 11-2, but this looks wide open. Mick, is there something that you think that can keep this one in the UK?
No, there isn't. I think this will go to the Irish. I think I like Tell Me Something Girl. I think that performance of hers at last year's festival was very impressive. I know, this is obviously slightly different and it's up in trip, but I just think on the old course, this sort of trip is absolutely fine for her. She was a bit unlucky at Leopardstown. It was a kind of messy race. And, she finished the race off to really good effect. I think she's got a kick in her, and I think she comes at this time of the year. I think she's a worthy favourite in here.
I find it hard to figure out that race last year. Magic Days was extremely keen and still managed to finish second. And yet, Tell Me Something Girl, like you said, Mick, she kind of caught the eye the last day. She's stepping up to 2.5 miles compared to last year in the Mayor's Novice. It should suit her. She clearly seems to like the hill here. She's probably a worthy favourite but like Ruby, I'm just not convinced of the Mayor's Novice form from last season. Just not fully convinced by it. Gary, are you solid on something here?
No, it's not a race that I have a strong view on, Tommy. I'd agree with you. I think Queen's Brook will run well, but her price has gone into free fall the last few days. I mean, she's only 6-1 now. I think she was well over twice that not long ago. So there's no real value from a punter's perspective now. Maybe one to have a closer look at on the day.
One of the most interesting horses of the week, Ruby, the Boodles Juvenile Handicap Gaelic Warrior. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, look, he's obviously or appears to have a pretty decent mark, Tommy, according to the handicappers. He's a nice horse. He jumps, he stays. But it's a very competitive handicap. I mean, I probably think it's a bit of a ludicrous price, really, 9-4 about a horse in a 22-runner handicap hurdle that you've only seen running in France. I think there could be a 9-4 shot probably tonight in Dundalk or definitely Monday in Stratford. That'll be a better bet than this fella. But look, he's a decent horse. But I tell you what he has done. He has created great value outside of himself in the market. And with him being so short, it means that there's a lot of horses overpriced here. I think in turn the Savola of the Williams is at 25-1 is way too big. And there's a couple of Gordons that are overpriced as well. Britska, the horse that won below in Cork that beat Adamantly Chosen.
Ebery Kasai, is that it?
No.
Ebisari.
Ebisari, yeah.
he's overpriced, and obviously the tide turns was eye-catching at Gordon. I think there's great each way value. If you happen to fancy something else, I think Gaelic Warrior has taken too much in the market here.
This is the type of race you love, Gary. You'll find a bit of value behind one that's quite short.
Yeah, well, it's kind of hard to ignore all the talk about Gaelic Warrior, Tommy, but Ruby makes a fair point there. Gordon Elliott always targets this race. He's got a strong team. The Tide Turns looks to be the pick of them this year. He ran very well in the Red Mills Trial Hurdle down at Gowran, taking on his elders that day. Wasn't given too hard a time late on. He's, I think, still an each way price. He should be in the frame at least. I mean, if Gaelic Warrior is as good as a lot of people seem to think he is, he'll probably win off that mark. But I'd say the Tide Turns will, at the very least, make a race of it.
Yeah, this is a lot different than bringing a horse first time here than bringing it to the champion hurdle without a run in a year. So I won't be surprised. It's impossible, I think, to back it at 5-2, no matter what you hear about it. I think if Gaelic Warrior wins, we just take it on the chin and move on. Mick, have you spotted something you like?
Well, no, look, the Gaelic Warrior angle, in here off a mark of 129. I think the reason this horse is so short is the race that he ran in at Otay. He finished third, and the horse that finished fourth and the horse that was second have both won Grade 1s in France. So, it kind of gives you an idea. All the horses around him have stepped up, and he doesn't need to improve much on what he's shown in France to be well in off 129. He could end up. I'd just be interested to get Ruby's take on him. How does he match up to against a horse like Vauban, Ruby? Because
completely different horse.
Gives you an idea.
Completely different horse. Vauban's a very quick horse. Gaelic Warrior will be definitely more of a stayer. They're completely different horses. Vauban's a next flat horse, almost 100 rated, whereas Gaelic Warrior is a much more national hunt type.
But you would have thought though, Ruby, at 129, he's better than that.
He is, but I would be surprised, Fitzy, if the Tide Turns, Ebasari, Brazil, that's only 3. There's another one of Gordon's Britska. I'd be surprised that a lot of them aren't a bit better than their marks.
It's a question of just how far ahead or who has most in hand. It's an intriguing race. It's probably, like as you said, Ruby, this is one where you look for value. Maybe Gaelic Warrior will win, and we'll be talking about it in Grade 1.
Even if he does win at 5-2, Tommy, if you can find one at 20s, 25s, quarter the odds, 50 the odds, you're still getting a better bet, and you've got 4 places.
No, you're right. It does create an opportunity. You're 100% right. It creates an opportunity to find some value, and there are horses who've had plenty of experience over here. In races, we've seen them. We know what they're about, and we can probably find a bit of value behind it. The National Hunt Chase finishes off Tuesday's racing. It's another very strong renewal of the race. Gordon has leading fancy. Willie has a leading fancy. No surprise there. Ruby, is there something you come down the side of Statler?
Statler's a good horse, Tommy. But he has 2 runs over fences, which would be a negative in this contest. Run Royal Fred has the profile, 10 runs, winner of a Tri-Town. But I'm siding with Vanillier. I thought he was brilliant in last year's Albert Bartlett. He wasn't that far behind Statler, then at Punchestown in the Daily Mirror, behind Gallop and the Champ. I think he blew out in his last start, but Gavin Cromwell's horses weren't firing at the time. He has Derek O'Connor on his back. He has 4 runs over fences, which is twice as many as Statler. He looks like he loved the trip. And I think Gavin's horses are coming back into form. Statler had a couple of more runs. You could really be keen on him. But just horses with his level of experience have a poor record in the race.
He seems to have settled a lot better over fences than hurdles, I think. I don't think you had much of a concern about that over hurdles, but he just seems to be a more settled horse. It was a real battling performance the last day. Vanillier, you're right. It's gone to about 9-2 now. I think the price, all the juice has been taken out of the price at that sort of level. I think 9-2 Vanillier, but I understand where you're coming from. Gavin had a month there where I think he had 80 runners and no winner until Jeremy Flame won below in Thurles, won the Mayor's Chase in Thurles. So they are hitting form at the right time. Mick, have you a strong fancy in the National Hunt Chase?
I'm praying. I know that they're not going to, but 3 under through 5, I thought was the perfect horse for this race. But they're going to go for the Brown Advisory, I think, on the Wednesday, the 3 miler, which, I think is a bit of a shame because I think this is tailor-made from. I know Rebecca Curtis, she was very keen to book a good jockey early a couple of months ago. She spoke with Barry O'Neill for her horse, Pat's Fancy, finished second to Brave Man's Game at Newbury. He's the right type. He's a very strong stayer. The ground could be, I think, interesting, Tommy, in here, because looking at the forecast this morning from the Met Office, there is a little bit of rain around. Like at the moment here in the UK, I think if you walk Cheltenham today, it probably on the old course wouldn't be far off good ground, because it's been very windy, been very dry here. So they desperately need some rain. And, you know, if they don't get the rain, there'll be the word watering, I think, appearing on the horizon. So, you know, there is rain forecast on Friday and Saturday. And I know the clerk of the course, John Pullen, will be hoping that comes.
Yeah, I don't think there's much due next week, is there, through the course of the actual festival itself? So we could do it getting it in advance. Gary, have you a fancy in this National Hunt chase?
Nothing particularly strong, Tommy. Again, the Irish horses dominate at the top of the market. Token pick for me would be Run Wild Fred, but it's not one I would be getting involved in personally.
We'll move on to the second day. We spent a lot of time on Tuesday, but I think it warrants it. Wednesday starts with the Ballymore Novice Hurdle. Again, it depends on who goes there. Gary, you're saying you think Sir Gerhard will be going this direction. The market suggests that's the case. He's around about 6-4 in the exchange, or 6-5. I think best price with the bookies. Is he the good thing that you maybe believe?
I'd expect him to win, Tommy, if he pitches up here. I think he'd take the beat in whichever race he runs in, to be honest. Very, very talented horse. I think the fact that he was able to win as easy as he did at Leopardstown last time, despite not jumping particularly fluently on the way around, just shows you what sort of an engine he has. Ruby and I were working together that day, and there were good horses that had dominated a Grade 1 at Ferryhouse earlier on in the season, disappearing out of the back of the TV over the final flight while he was almost coming across the line. So that just gives you an idea of the ability that's in there with Sir Gerhard. And I think the feeling in the camp was that he would be better with a lead maybe after that race rather than having to make his own running. So you could see maybe sitting in second, third in this race and just pulling away up the hill. Of the horses at the bigger prices, I think What Do You Want's one not to forget about, Tommy. Stable companion, owned by the race sponsor, Sean Mulryan, who won it before with City Island. He was favourite for a Grade 1 at Naas last time. It was a bit of a write-off. It didn't go his way that day. I think I'd put a line through that. And at 20, maybe even 25-1, I think he's got a good each-way shout here as well for Willie Mullins.
Yeah, I think he might be a bad shout. I know it was notable that there was a nice bit of support for him. I think it was at the Dublin Racing Festival before he came out of the race, a late absentee. Ruby, he is or has looked a fair horse, hasn't he? What Do You Want?
He has. I just wonder would the Albert Bartlett suit him better myself, but he's going to run in the Ballymore. Sir Gerhard or Dysart Dynamo, I think whichever one Willie runs here is definitely the one to beat. Journey With Me has looked a decent horse, Tommy, and he's 2 starts over hurdles, but again, looks like he wants a bit further, and I'm hearing on the grapevine that Ginto is going to step up to 3 miles. So I think this could be a good bit an easier contest to win than the Ballymore or than the Supreme, and therefore I'd fancy whichever one Willie runs here at the top of the market.
Yeah, if you look at the exchange betting, you have Sir Gerhard is about 6-4, then you have Dysart Dynamo around about the 11-2 mark, and they're not going to run the same race. Ginto is as you said, probably going to go for the Albert Bartlett. So all of a sudden you're looking at there isn't really much competition. Sir Gerhard could end up going off a nice shade of odds on in this one. Mick, would you be opposing him?
Yeah, look, I like Sir Gerhard. I love horses that have been to the festival before and performed, so it's hard to get away from him. I think Journey With Me is a horse that I really like. I was praying that they were going to say they were going to run him in the 3 miler in the Albert Bartlett. He just looks like a real stayer. But I think if he turns up here, you know, if you look down through the race, there's question marks about where a lot of these horses are going to go. So, you know, he could actually end up being a bit of value in this race. So, you know, I think Journey With Me is definitely one I'd want him on my side anyway.
Yeah, he looks a nice prospect for the future. I think Sir Gerhard just set such a high standard. He'd be extremely difficult to beat. One of the races potentially of the festival is the Brown Advisory. It depends again what turns up, lads. Have we a clear picture on what that's going to be? Brave Man's Game is obviously favourite at the moment. Lon Presti, I think the Visha Williams confirmed that he'll be going this direction rather than taking on the lads in the 2.5 miler.
Yeah, Venetia said that unless the ground gets very soft, he'll run in this race. Brave Man's Game, obviously this is where he's going. The trouble with Brave Man's Game is the crowd. He's a brilliant jumper, but the worry is I was down to start last year and he literally melted in front of my eyes before the start. Really? He just got very, very worked up, and I'd just be a little bit concerned about that with him. You know, second race on the second day, the buzz about the place. I just think it'll rev him up. There's no doubt he's a good horse. I actually think a High Senior who was behind him at Kempton, I thought he could run a big race here. I'm just a bit disappointed with the price. I thought he might be bigger than he is now. I just thought, look, because Willie, if he runs Gallopin Des Champs here, I think Gallopin Des Champs, he's the one to beat and he sets the standard. But the rest of them that are in here, you know, you can make strong cases for any. But I just thought a High Senior, you know, he's definitely a player in this. You won that Sefton Novices Hurdle at Aintree. Kempton just didn't suit him at all. And I definitely think he's a player in here.
Long Pressy is a decent horse too, isn't he, Mick? I love the way he attacked the hill the day he won. He just seemed to take off, and some horses do, some horses don't, and he really seemed to relish it.
Yeah, he loves the test, and he's a very, very good jumper. And I think, you know, Cheltenham will suit him. But is he as good as Gallopin Des Champs at his best? Well, I don't think he is. So, you know, I think that's obviously factored into the price. But I think, you know, he is a smart horse, Long Pressy, but has he won easy races?
Yeah, potentially. This is definitely a huge step up. Ruby, even if Gallopin Des Champs goes the shorter race, Willie has a likely type in Capodanno.
Yeah, he does. Obviously fell at the Dublin Racing Festival on his last start, but he had given Bob Ollinger something of a race at Punchestown in the Kildare Novice Chase. I thought he did well to win on his first start at Naas. He seems to be in pretty good form at home, Tommy, and I'd imagine he'll go there. Gallopin Des Champs, as far as I know, the intention is to run him in the Turners. I'd agree with Mick. I watched Brave Man's game in Newbury the last day, and it was a cold day and the sweat was running off him. I thought he was particularly warm on that occasion. I think a High Senior is a very good horse, but he's just not learning quick enough at the jumping for me. And it could be next year before he gets his act together. Long Pressy is a decent horse, but look, as far as I know, Gallopin goes the other way, so I wouldn't put you off Capodanno each way here.
Gary, the Mick and Ruby seem to be against the favourite here. Are you also taking the chance against the Brave Man's game?
I think I would, Tommy. I have nothing against the horse. He's been very impressive. I love the way he jumps, Brave Man's game. But I think with Long Pressy probably going to be pointed here now, he's got, you know, maybe a more serious rival to deal with than it looked like was going to be the case. And I wouldn't forget about Capodanno either. He obviously made Bob Ollinger work pretty hard to master him at Punchestown 2 starts back. Not ideal, obviously, a bit like the horse we were talking about earlier on, Houghton Collier, that he's going to come into this on the back of an incompletion at Leopardstown. But look, that can happen to any horse. And I think those two are two that you could definitely maybe get on your side against the favourite here. And you'd be going in there with a real good shout.
I think we all agree that if Gallopin went here, he'd probably win, but it would almost be a shame for the purists if we didn't see himself and Bob Ollinger turn up against each other. The Champion Chase, lads. Mick, surely you're keeping this one at home.
I hope so. He schooled this morning, Shishkin, and he looked pretty electric. He went up twice, and second time Nico really let him whiz. So, you know, he's in very good form. Things have gone to plan. And yeah, like, it's a home game for Shishkin. His record at Cheltenham is pretty good. You know, win a Supreme, win an Arkle. Yeah, really looking forward to it. And, you know, I think we've definitely got a very strong chance here. And I hope he flies the flag for the British trained horses.
Nice bit of confidence there, Ruby.
Yeah, and it's hard not to be confident about him. He beat Energramine at Ascot going right-handed. Arguably, Shishkin could be better going left-handed, as Mick has said. He won a Supreme that he had no entitlement to win with the mistake he made early in the back straight, yet he still found a way to win. I love that about horses. He was brilliant in the Arkle last year. You know, got a bit tactical, and Nico kept it so simple, sent him to the front at the third last and outstayed the opposition. There's no negative to Shishkin. There's no negative to how Nico de Bonville can ride him. I think he'd be hard to beat. Energramine has to turn it around. Chacun Pour Soi has to prove that he can run to something of a standard in the UK. He's had 2 runs there and they've both been disappointing. I think Shishkin's going to be really hard to beat.
Willie's always said that if he had the choice to ride 1 to 2, he'd ride Chacun Pour Soi over Energramine. The prices are roughly 7 to 2 on the machine in Energramine, about almost 7 to 1 Chacun Pour Soi. Has the bird flown for Chacun Pour Soi? He's 10 years of age now.
I don't know. Has the bird flown for him? He's a very good horse, but there's an argument to be made that he's a better horse on a flat track. And look, I think you give Shishkin or Energramine the run off the home turn in last year's Champion Chase that Chacun Pour Soi got. and they both have won the race. Jack and Bourgeois didn't. So I'm afraid he has to prove himself to me. I won't be forgiving him for that one just yet.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. He was ideally positioned. He effectively, you would have thought, had the race won. This looks a hot renewal of the champion chase. Gary, which way would you see this going?
I think it has to be Shishkin, Tommy. Ruby made a fair point there that he's a horse, even when things don't go his way, he still finds a way to win. You often hear that comment made about top football teams or other sports, what have you. At Ascot, it was the same last time out. He made a couple of little errors, had a peck on landing. I thought for 90% of that race, Energymine was going to beat him. Energymine seemed to get it into a lovely rhythm up front. Had him in big trouble, I thought, going into the home turn. And from that point on, Shishkin just had to dig very deep. And that's exactly what he did. And we've seen him do that countless times. He's always strong at the finish of his races. And I don't see any reason why this will be any different. So, look, he's going to be exceptionally hard to beat. I've been a huge fan of Chacun Brissois over the last few years. I thought he was brilliant at Punchestown last year, but why didn't he win this last year? It was all there for him on the day, and it didn't happen, as Ruby and yourself have said there. So it's got to be Shishkin, I think, Tommy.
Yeah, look at Chacun Brissois will still have supporters because it's hard to ignore what Willie continues to say about him and believe so much in him. So, but it is going to be a difficult when you're coming up against a Shishkin. I think if he was up against an Energymine, I think I might take a chance against Chacun Brissois beating him. But with Shishkin in the race, he just looks a machine. The cross country chase, we won't spend a lot of time, but it is good to see Tiger roll back and Gordon speaking so highly about his most recent pieces of work. It would be remarkable to win again at the Cheltenham Festival, Ruby, wouldn't it?
It would be great. He's a wonderful horse. He lights up around the place. He was brilliant there last year when he beat Easyland. And I think his biggest danger could possibly be stable beside him when he gets there. And that's Delta Work. He schooled well. Looking back at the Savills chase at Christmas, Delta Work wasn't that far behind. Some horses were going to make a case for in the Gold Cup. So, look, he's a very good horse in his day, Delta Work. And he could be Tiger Road's biggest danger.
Isn't it almost remarkable that a horse that was beaten only 15.5 lengths in the Grade 1 last time out is in the cross country chase? He's not even favoured. Mick, have you a big Tiger Road fan, I assume?
Oh yeah, look, you'd love to see him go out and have his swan song at Cheltenham. But I'm with Ruby here. I think Delta Work, he's obviously a quirky horse, but it's interesting they pitched him in here, and he's been over and schooled it, I think. And yeah, like he brings a bit of class to this race, and like he'll feel like he's going around in second gear. And I think it'll be interesting to see who rides him as well. Because Jack Kennedy, they've always said, is crucial to the horse. Is he going to ride him in here? And if that's the case, well, yeah, I think he could be a bit of value to upset the Tiger.
Mightn't be straightforward either. There's a lot of green and gold in behind Gary. Prengard seemed to be an interesting horse. He didn't show much on his Irish debut, but there have been plenty of talk about him before he was purchased by JP McManus. Have you heard the right vibes maybe for him?
I haven't heard anything about him, Tommy, to be honest. And you couldn't back him based on what you saw at Naas the other day. But who knows? He might leave that behind. I thought if he did want to back one each way against Tiger Roll, and he's obviously going to be extremely hard to beat if he's anywhere near his best. Midnight Maestro seems to be really getting the hang of things in the cross country now. Beat Shady Operator at Punchestown last time. He did run badly at Cheltenham on the cross country track on his only previous visit. So that would be at the back of your mind. But if he can translate the Punchestown run to Cheltenham, I think he'll run a good race.
Yeah. Champion Bumper, lads, looks like a proper renewal. It really does. Ruby, like Willie brings over good horses every year, but he looks to have a really exceptional bunch, and yet there's plenty of positivity behind American Mike from Gordon Elliott. This could be one of the races of the week.
Yeah, it'll be a real dust-up, won't it? American Mike was very impressive at Navan, and Jamie Codd and Gordon Elliott haven't hidden their admiration for him and their opinions that you have to respect, Tommy. I know Willie loves Pascal Viga. He's been very impressive on his 2 starts at Leopardstown. He really blew me away on the second occasion. But Redemption Day is working really well at home. I know Paul Townend has been happy with him, and James's Gate seems to be in good form too. Look, if you're a fan of a pint of Guinness, maybe you should be siding with James's Gate. He's definitely a bit of value, but yeah, look, I'm in the Facile Vega camp, but nobody knows where the level of ability is with any of these horses, and it could be a cracking race to watch. It must be very close to as good a team in depth, and maybe not like individually, that Willie's brought over for this race, and that's something remarkable since he's won it so many. You know the old story, Tommy. You think you have 4 Derby horses, you have none.
Don't forget about Serpentine, Ruby.
Yeah.
Very good point, Gary. Mick, what's impressed you most in looking at
Look, it's hard to not be impressed by Facile Vega's win. But at the same time, like, Willie sends over his own little army to run in this race. And it's not always the first string that wins. The last year, Sir Gerhard beat Kilcrut. Yes, okay, had the run of the race, but that's the nature of every race at Cheltenham. You know, one horse will get the run of it, and it might not always be the favourite. So, you know, I just thought Redemption Day, you know, I thought that was a very impressive win, and at the price is definitely one that I thought was value taking on the favourite.
Is there anything lurking amongst the home team that we should be afraid of?
No. What you've got to remember is the Q Card won this as a 66-1 shot. You know, so, you know, is there one like that in here? I don't think there is. I haven't been super impressed with any of the bumper horses that we've had win here. I think this is going to be an Irish win.
Gary, you're going to concur?
I think it will be, Tommy. Yes, you won't be surprised to hear. Look, I think American Mike, if you ask me about their long-term prospects, I think he's every bit as good a long-term prospect as Facile Vega. But we're talking about the here and now, obviously, what's going to win at Cheltenham next week. And I just think Facile Vega's looked that bit more of a sharper horse to me. American Mike's pedigree is all stamina. He's by Mahler out of a mare that excelled over 3 miles, American Jenny. So for him to already be as good as he is, shows you that he's a very classy horse. But I think Facile Vega will just have the legs on him. There's no angle at the prices here for me, Tommy. The value, if there was any in the first place, has long been sucked out of it. So I don't see myself getting involved.
Redemption Day looked particularly fast as well. The last day, it's a cracking contest. You can try 3 or 4 of these and get them beaten. Although I suspect if the top 2 in the betting, if one of them doesn't win, there'll be 2 very disappointed trainers. Let's move on to Thursday, which starts with this potential clash between Bob Bollinger and Gallopin Des Champs. What an absolutely mouth-watering prospect! There could be there's potential that they might only get 3 or 4 horses in this, that they're all going to run away, run scared, because these 2 are potential machines, aren't they? Ruby, what do you?
Yeah, I think they are, but I think it'll be a pity if they only end up with 3 or 4 runners, but so be it. That's what happens. But look, Bob Bollinger was an incredible novice hurdler. He's turned a foot off the bend in last year's Ballymore when he stretched away from Brave Man's Game, and Gaillard de Menil was really impressive. He won on his first start of offences at Gore, and then he beat Capodanno. But whilst Gallopin Des Champs was an inferior novice hurdler, even though they never met, what fences have done is brought about improvement in Gallopin Des Champs. And I don't think they've improved Bob Bollinger. I think he's stayed at the level of horse he is. Now, maybe that'll still be good enough, but Bob Bollinger, to me, is a fraction safe with his jumping. He'd be very sure once or twice in Punchestown when I thought he'd let fly and throw a big jump. He didn't. He took another stride and was safe and clean, but there was no gain. And there is a gain in what Gallopin Des Champs does, jumping. And I think he's improved. Jumping has, to me, seems to have improved Gallopin Des Champs and held Bob Bollinger at the level he was at. That might still be enough, Tommy, but I'm in the Gallopin camp anyway.
Yeah, Bob Bollinger last year was a remarkable performance. I thought he was quite keen through the race, and to be able to still travel as strongly as he did down into dip and then pick up all the way up to the line, beating Brave Man's Game, it was an exceptionally good performance, I thought. He's I think he's Gaillard de Menil, sorry. I think he's like you said, Ruby, he's not making mistakes. He's not particularly, he's not doing a huge amount wrong in jumping fences, but we're nitpicking because he was so good over hurdles that we're saying, okay, it's not electric maybe, but his engine to beat Capodanno looked like he had him beaten the last day for a very short period, turning in maybe, and then the engine of Bob Bollinger just took over, and he absolutely galloped through the line, didn't he?
He did, but there was 3 fences bypassed in that race, Tommy. They hadn't jumped any defences in the back straight, so there was a lot of galloping there, not that much jumping. But I think you hit the nail on the head without realising it. Bob Bollinger could take a fair bite in a hurdle race. So why all of a sudden over fences has he got very relaxed? He's got very relaxed because fences slow him down. And you don't necessarily want the fences slowing you down. He backs off and he's safe. That's the way I see him. I would prefer if he still was as keen to get on with it and wanted to go, but he doesn't. It slows him a fraction. And that, to me, is what swings the favour slightly in Gallopin Des Champs' corner.
Gary, Bob Olinger, as Ruby said, was a better hurdler. Does that not normally translate when it comes down to the crunch? And if it was a small field, would it just suit Bob Olinger maybe?
It might do, but just to go back about the novice hurdler thing, I don't know whether I'd read too much into that, because Galopin Des Champs was only kind of getting going when the season wrapped up over hurdles. He obviously had a few hiccups along the way, and it was only in those last 2 runs at Cheltenham where he ran in the handicap, and then the Grade 1 at the Punchestown Festival where we got to see the best of him. Whereas Bob Olinger, obviously, he was at a high level all the way through the season. So I wouldn't hold that against Galopin Des Champs. And to me, Tommy, the key part of all this is the vote of confidence from the Willie Mullins and Galopin Des Champs team to run him here when they could run him in the 3-mile race, and he'd be a red hot favourite and probably would win I wouldn't necessarily say in a canter, but he probably would win. Whereas here he's taking on a hugely exciting horse that's still unbeaten. That just speaks volumes for me in terms of the confidence that the Galopin Des Champs team have in their horse. And I think he has looked the more proficient chaser of the two of them over fences so far. It's still early days. Bob Olinger seemed to school well at Navan the other day, and maybe we will see him jump a bit slicker at Cheltenham. But of their performances on the track so far, Galopin Des Champs is the one who's been the more impressive, and that's why I think he'll win.
Mick, which way would you?
Look, I think if you're looking at the talented horses, I think Bob Olinger probably possesses the more talent. But look, Ruby said it, and Gary said it about the jumping. That's the key. There's 16 fences in this race, and if you lose half a length at half of them, it's 4 lengths that you have to make up. So if Galopin Des Champs is making half a length at all 4 of those obstacles, then suddenly it swings the whole thing round and evens the playing field. The one thing that I do know is, though, Bob Olinger, if it comes down, I think, to the two of them land at the back of the last, and it's a head-to-head, Bob Olinger, I think, will come home the stronger. It's going to depend on how Bob Olinger jumps. It really is as simple as that. And with that's going to, it really is going to, like 1 or 2 fences could make the difference here. And you have to say that if you were marking the horses on their jumping, Galopin Des Champs is a long way ahead of Bob Olinger. But that's quite a while ago. They've done a lot of work on him since then, Bob Olinger. And I've no doubt he'll be slicker, but he'll need to be. And what you want is these two taking each other on, because this could turn out to be the race of the festival. These are 2 very, very good horses.
Yeah, I think Gary made a great point. The fact that Willie is happy to go here, even though not that he would ever be avoiding one horse, but he's happy to go here rather than think.
Is there any chance that Willie might just run him in the other race?
Sorry, I'll unmute myself. He's only a 6-year-old, Mick, and Willie thinks his style of racing and style of jumping is not what a 3-miler should be doing.
Interesting. It really is that tight. It's a fabulous race to look forward to. Just let's hope the two of them get there in one piece and we have that race. Ruby, when Willie was prompted for his best bet of the entire week, Allaho jumped to mind. Now he's obviously going to be a bit of a short price in the Ryanair chase. He looks a bit of a star. He's a beast when you're standing beside him. He's a proper national hunt chasing type. Will he back up last year's win here?
It's impossible to oppose, Tommy. I don't think we need to delay too much longer than that one.
Anybody want to oppose Allaho?
No,
definitely not, Tommy.
Yeah, if we move on. So the Stayers Hurdle is a race in recent years, certainly I've really just struggled to get a bit of a handle on it. It doesn't excite me in particular. Is there something in this Flooring Porter? Obviously won it last year. Does a reasonably strong home team, Mick? Yeah,
probably Tyne Hill. He comes in here fresh, really good run in the long walk when he was second to Champ. He's a fresh horse coming in here, and I think that might just help him. Look, I think there's question marks about a lot of these. Like Flooring Porter he's a bit of a handful. He'll have enjoyed the fact there was no crowd. What's he going to be like with a crowd at Cheltenham? He's hard to get a handle on anyway. So I think that'll make life very difficult for him. Champ, I can't believe that Champ didn't win the Cleve. He gave Paisley Park 15 lengths. He got 15 lengths start off him and he couldn't beat him. nothing went wrong for Champ that day. And that, that was a concern for me. I thought on the long walk run that he would definitely be a player in the stairs hurdle. But getting beat in the Cleve has certainly dented that. He's an older horse now as well. So, he's not one that's had a lot of runs every year anyway. So that's a concern. I just thought Time Hill coming in here as a fresh horse, he definitely was the one I'd like to be on anyway.
Yeah, it looks wide open. Ruby Classical Dream the last day was a bit disappointing in the Galmoy. Can he bounce back?
Of course he can. They all can. He seems to be in great form at home, but I'd say that run was more disappointing than Champs in the Cleve. Royal Kahala won at home by the Lee, was second. I think Classical Dream is further to come back to than Champ possibly does. I was hoping Fitz he was going to tip Champ there and I was going to row in behind him. I think his Ascot run is the best piece of form on offer in this race, and I think I'm going to side with Champ. Classical Dream can bounce back. I hope he does, but I'm going to side with Champ.
Gary, have you a strong opinion on this? It does look wide open. That piece of form that Ruby talking about, the long work, beating Time Hill, Champ's form looks solid. I say there is a disappointment since, but that seems to be the way with these horses. Kind of difficult to know what to expect, is it?
Maybe so, Tommy. I do kind of detect some pretty strong vibes from the Champ camp over the last week or so. So maybe he'll leave the Cheltenham run behind and return to the Ascot form. But I'd actually disagree with Ruby on this one. To me, the race at Leopardstown at Christmas where Classical Dream beat Florian Porter, I think that's the best bit of form here. I thought that was a hell of a race. They went hammer and tongs, obviously, from the word go. And not everyone agrees, but I thought Florian Porter was the moral winner of that race. To even get as close as he did to Classical Dream after the ground he lost at the start. And it's not as if Classical Dream was waiting for him to catch up after he got the lead on him. He kept up a great gallop all the way around. And Florian Porter looked at one stage as though he might get to him. I thought that was a hell of a run. You're always going to have a worry with horses like those two who maybe aren't the most straightforward. And with the crowds back this year, probably Florian Porter in particular, you might just be a little bit worried on that score. But I think he's a worthy favourite. I'd imagine if he runs up to scratch, runs up to the level he did at Leopardstown, whatever beats him will probably win. I think Royal Kahala's got a place chance as well. The form of the Gowran race obviously isn't anything special, but it was her first go at 3 miles, and I'd say there might be a bit more to come from her over that distance.
Yeah, I'd be interested if she goes here. It'd be interesting to see how she performs. But it's a nice novelty to have a championship race next week where it's around about 4-1 the field. There are a few handicaps in here, but the last one we're going to touch on Thursday is the Mayor's Novice Race. Ruby, one of the more interesting ones. Obviously, Willie has a strong hand again, as is his wont. Dino Blue, who won on very testing ground, will be very different next week, but was mightily impressive, albeit it was a Clonmel maiden hurdle.
Yeah, she was, but the runner-up was going to win at Limerick on her next start when she fell at the second last, La Prima Donna. So, look, Dina Blue only did what was asked of her, and she was very impressive. Willie also has Brandy Love, who jumped violently to her left at Fairyhouse, and even going left-handed in Cheltenham will suit her. She still could be pretty awkward to ride if she goes that left. She'll be onto the chase course, and Paul Town will have to pull her back out every time. So, yeah, I'd probably be siding with Dino Blue if I had to, but I think Party Central, I think the track will suit her, the race will suit her, and I think she's an each way bet. Davy Russell will take his time on her and she'll be coming home, and I'd be surprised if she doesn't run into the money. She might be quite good enough to win, but I could definitely see her running into the money.
And that run the last day at the Dublin Racing Festival in a handicap was a kind of a type of progress run, wasn't it? Kind of she was obviously very well treated off 1-2-1. She has a touch of class, and it was nice. It was actually a nice run to bring her forward for a race like this. Experience-wise,
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Gary, do you fancy anything in this one? This is a decent race. I remember Grangie, I think Ruby or Willie was saying that Brian Cooper, obviously, Jockey might say it, but he felt he had the two of them, Allegory Devassi, two stable companions, and Brandy Love covered when he fell. Would she have a chance?
I think she definitely have a chance. Yeah, I'd personally be against Brandy Love, Tommy. I know when a horse jumps left on a right-handed track, the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of people is to think, oh, when she goes left, it'll be a different story next day. But Ruby's pointed it out there. There isn't a continuous running rail for a lot of that track, the new course at Cheltenham. So there's going to be headaches in terms of keeping her on the straight and narrow, whether it's left-handed or not. And I would rather side with a horse who's maybe a bit more straightforward. Dino Blue really impressed me at Clonmel, but she's a horrible price now, about 5-2, 11-4 for a horse that's just won a maiden. You couldn't recommend backing her at that sort of price, but I thought she created a really good impression. I've read somewhere that LA Bell is unlikely to run in this. If she ran, she's the one I'd want to be on. Dan Skelton's mare, very good sorting bumpers last season. Did really well to win a slowly run graded race at Huntingdon last time. To me, this looks tailor-made for her. I can understand maybe if they want to keep her for Aintree, the speed track there might suit her better. But if she ran this, she's the one I'd be backing.
Yeah, Mick Bell would be interesting. Also, if Harry Fry has one that's unbeaten, Love Envoy. Mighty Blue ran well in the race last year. Could probably maybe challenge for a place in the frame again.
Yeah, I think, the worry is, Gary was saying about LA Bell. I think the worry for the Skelton team is this track, which puts a real emphasis on stamina. I think if it was on the other track, I think they'd be a lot happier. So I think that might be the reason why they're thinking about entry for LA Bell. She was third in the bumper last year behind Sir Gerhard and Kilcrut, did best of the British trained horses. So she's definitely a player. Love Envoy, she won on very soft ground at Lingfield and Sandown. She's done nothing wrong. I just, the Irish horses probably look like they've got a bit of an edge on us here. Like just even looking at previous winners of this race, Willie Mullins kind of farms it a little bit. So I think Willie's got a strong hand in here, and I'm not sure. Like Love Envoy, I've been impressed with her, but she's looked really good on very soft ground.
Yeah, it's quite an open contest this year, I think. Let's move on. That's to Friday, the last day, and we start, of course, with the Triumph Hurdle. This is an intriguing race. You've got Vauban, who was beaten by Pied Piper, but then went to a Grade 1 as a maiden and won that, beating Field Door. They are the first three in the betting for the race in what looks a good race. I see Iker Allen as well, Ruby. He's in around about 14-1. Ilate Tomte, a horse that finished third on debut for Willie, third in that Grade 1, won by Vauban. It's an interesting race, this. You're just muted again, Ruby.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Obviously, Vauban and Pied Piper clashed in the maiden hurdle at Punchestown. Pied Piper came out on top. They went different ways then. Pied Piper was brilliant at Cheltenham in January. Vauban went to Mull at the Dublin Racing Festival. They're two really good juveniles. But like I think different day, different track, different style of race, definitely bring Field Door back into it. I think the steadily run race in Leopardstown didn't suit him. He's a really strong stayer. And I thought Ilate Tomte, I thought that was a cracking first run over hurdles at Punchestown or at Leopardstown even. Run up third behind Vauban and Field Door in their first attempt. I thought that was a hell of a performance, and each way I think he's the value here.
Would you give Iker Allen any chance? He was further behind in that race in Leopardstown, but he went back out and only Grade 3 next time. Maybe was he slightly disappointing, or was that his level?
You couldn't dismiss him anyway, Tommy. He was good in his last start. He didn't jump particularly well in Leopardstown, and he has a chance.
Yeah, Gary, this is a cracking little contest, isn't it?
It is. I think it's a good betting race as well, Tommy. I'd be taking on the favourite here. To me, short enough on what we know of him so far. Pied Piper has beaten him already. And in the Leopardstown race, Ruby's mentioned it there. I thought a couple of the horses in behind could be real dangerous to him when they meet again. And Ilate Tomte was the one who I thought he ran an extraordinary race for a horse that had never run over hurdles before that day. Dropped in out the back. It was a difficult place to be the way the race panned out. The horses who dominate were ridden much more forward in the field. Came home like a train. He flew past the two that finished in front of him, not far after the line. I mean, as hurdle debuts go, I thought it was chock full of promise. And as he might run the Mick's all right there. I hope maybe they ride him a little bit closer to the pace this time around. But either way, he looks a horse with a bright future. So if you ask me who the most likely winner was, I'd fancy Pied Piper maybe to confirm the earlier superiority over Vauban. But there's a lot of good horses in this race, and I think there's definitely a bit of value at bigger prices with Ilate Tomte in particular, and Iker Allen, who you've mentioned there, as a chance as well.
Yeah, I think they're both they're two very nice horses too. This is a race that has plenty of depth. Mick, was that a non-seed or a fall? Mick, you're back with us, Mick?
Sorry, I can't hear you guys for some reason. I seem to have lost my sound. But look, I thought Night Salute comes here for Milton Harris. He's a real good story, Milton Harris. He's a bit of a character. He had his license taken off him for a little while, got it back. He worked for 10 years on the cruise ships. He used to date Belinda Carlisle. You know, he's a real character. And if Night Salute wins the Triumph, I can tell you now, there'll be tears, there'll be joy, sadness, happiness, all rolled into one. look, this horse, we haven't got to the bottom of him. And I think he'll arrive at the last with a chance. It's just what he finds up the hill. I think will be really interesting. So he's definitely one I think that is in the mix. But I've been really impressed with Vauban. Like he should be unbeaten. Like he should have won at Punchestown, and he probably should have got the race in the steward's room anyway at Punchestown. But I quite like him. But I think Night Salute will be a great story, and I think look. Great stories don't always win, but I do think this horse's form backs it up.
For a really poor pun that I'm going to regret now, if Night Salute wins, it really will be, heaven will be a place on earth for Milton Harris. Let's move on to the Albert Bartlett. This is Ginto, we think, is going this direction. Hillcrest is favourite for Henry Daly. Manella Crooner is a late withdrawal. Yesterday, I think we got word of that. But I think Gordon Gary has a strong substitute, let's just say, in Ginto.
Oh, without a doubt, Tommy. I think Ginto, to me, is a better horse than Manella Crooner, and I think he's going to have a terrific shout if he runs in this race. I thought, to be honest, I was a little bit surprised they weren't going to run him in this in the first place. I'm a big fan of the favourite Hillcrest. I see he's been confirmed for the race today. He reminds me a bit of a horse from the late 90s called French Holly. Big horse who was a bit clumsy at times over hurdles, but had a terrific engine. And even when he kicks ones out of the way, it doesn't seem to interrupt his stride at all. So he's going to be very, very hard to beat. But Ginto being parachuted into this race, if it is confirmed, just makes life that bit more difficult for him. I'd imagine the winner will come from one of those. Although there is a horse of Willie's in there called the Nice Guy, who I'd say is capable of a fair bit more than we've seen of him so far. I'd still just about be with Hillcrest on balance, Tommy, but Ginto will be a formidable rival for him.
Hillcrest is an absolute beast of a horse, isn't he? He's a huge machine altogether. His record is fairly good. Mick, you'll know plenty about Hillcrest. He's looked smart so far, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, but he's a big raw horse, Tommy, and that would just be the little bit of a concern for me with Hillcrest. He has got a little bit of Cheltenham experience, which will help him, but I'm just a little concerned that he had a hard enough race at Haydock as well. There's no doubt he's a horse with a bright future, but I just worry that this race can be a little bit of a dust-up, and I'm just not sure that he's ready for that. That's the only concern that I have in here. I thought Gary makes a good point about Ginto. I thought he was impressive in that race at Naas. He's the one that if he runs in here, I'd really like.
Yeah, I'm with you. Ruby Gary also gave a nice mention to the Nice Guy, or positive mention to the Nice Guy. Is he a horse?
He keeps delivering on the track, Tommy. He hasn't shown us a whole pile at home, but he's gone to the race course 3 times and he's won 3 races, which is always a good sign. It'll be another huge step forward for him were he to win this. I'm a Hillcrest fan. I loved him in Haydock, and I think he's the one. Ginto's obviously a very good horse as well, and I'm only repeating what Gary O'Brien has said. Ginto definitely adds spice to it, but I would have been in the Hillcrest camp before that.
Showed a good attitude as well. He is, as you've all said, he's a huge horse, and he's going to have. He's probably still developing, but he showed a good attitude too over hurdles when maybe he made a couple of slight mistakes, but was able to pick up off them again. He does look at the real deal. In fairness,
yeah, he does. Yeah.
Let's move on to the big one, the Gold Cup. If you'd asked me, Tony, 2 or 3 years ago that Galvin would be favoured, I'd have been pretty amazed. But he's like that, like Hillcrest Ruby. He's a horse who keeps delivering. He seems to be getting better. I would have small concerns about him here. He got beaten in Down Royal by Frodon. He beat Aplutar's short head the last time. I didn't think that much went right for Aplutar. Also got the impression that maybe Aplutar wasn't quite at his best the last day. Maybe I'm being unfair on Galvin. Maybe he's just he's just a real winning machine. He knows how to get there on the big day. Have you a strong opinion on it, Ruby? It looks quite a difficult race to me. Quite open.
I think it is too. I think you have 3 really strong stayers in Manila Indo, Galvin and Alboon Photo, and you don't have a massive amount of pace. Protectorate is the only possible horse you could fancy from an English point of view, and he's an improver, so maybe he could. But I just think Plutar, I loved him in Haydock. I think everything went wrong for Christmas. And I think he's just had a sounder season than Manila Indo. So that's why I'd be siding with him over of Henry's too. There's no front runner here. I think Manila Indo, Galvin, Album Photo, they could do with something dragging them a really strong gallop, and that's not going to happen. One of them is going to have to do it themselves, or maybe two of them will go together. But I just tactically think this race could set up for a Plutar.
Yeah, I've gone through this race in my head a lot over the last few months, trying to figure out what I might tipping, what I might fancy. And even though there were times when I certainly wanted to be against Plutar, I'm kind of back with him again. His running haydock was seriously good. There were negatives, Ruby, for Album Photo. He was quite open about that on his press day. He seems back quite solid in the market again. Have things picked up obviously in the last couple of weeks? That's the impression.
Yeah, he seems to be working well, Tommy. But look, I thought Album Photo was a great each way price at 20 to 1 before Christmas. So I think he's as good a value now at 10s. No, I don't.
Yeah, Gary, this is quite an open race. Gordon has a very strong hand. Well, he's got Galvin there. I know horse you like is Conflated. I still have no idea what to make of that horse. I keep getting visions of the horse that went down to Wexford and didn't jump a fence. The horse that was in the Kerry National, went down and breasted the first three and eventually unseated. And then he came out and gave a display of jumping the last day, which kind of stunned me, to be quite honest about it. Maybe, it's still an Irish Gold Cup. He's not proven over the trip. You might think it might improve him. I don't know. But I just don't know what to make of that form with the Manila Indo. People said Manila Indo is, he comes back and he produces at Cheltenham. And this was like him showing that in the spring he's slightly better. So he's certainly better, that he's improving. And I just, if I could figure out what I thought of Conflated, I might have a better idea where reigning champ Manila Indo stands.
Well, I think you summed it up well there with Conflated. He's got his fair share of previous convictions, but he has looked something of a reformed character of late. He put up a great performance to win a handicap at Navan under a big weight. And then obviously it was the run in the Irish Gold Cup last time that was the real revelation. I don't know whether it's to do with the horse's routine or the fact that they've left the hood off him for his last few runs, maybe a combination of both. But to me, he just looks a different horse now, Tommy. And I can't believe Connections are considering running him in the Ryanair when he's beaten the horse that won the Gold Cup at Cheltenham last year by 6 odd lengths at Leopardstown. Why would you not have a go? I mean, if Allaho, fair enough, if he runs and gets beat and say Allaho doesn't win the Ryanair, it might take you a week or two to get over it, but it won't take as long as it'll take you to get over it if you see Manila Indo winning the Gold Cup after you've run in the Ryanair. And as Ruby said, he went forward, or he ran close to the pace at Leopardstown. He might just get into a lovely rhythm on the front end here as well. To me, everything adds up to him pitching up in this race, and I'd be tempted to have a few quid each way in him, just because I think along with Protectorat, he offers a little bit of an X factor, an unknown quantity in the race. Whereas I think with a lot of the other horses, we know where we stand. Plutar is obviously one of those. And to me, he's by far the most likely winner. Ran a belter in it last year. If he jumped a little bit better over the final few fences, it could have been different. He was brilliant at Haydock on his seasonal return. And as Ruby said there a minute ago, he was the best horse in the race for me at Christmas, even though Galvin ended up nutting him on the line. So if he turns up in peak form, I think he's going to be very, very hard to beat. But I just hope Conflated is in there against him, because I'd be fascinated, like you sound you would be, to see what he'd do.
Yeah, I don't know. He's gone from 10s out to 16s. This is a horse who won an Irish Gold Cup by 6.5 lengths. So I'm still confused about the form, how to read the form. Mick, did it impress you, Conflated, when he won the Irish Gold Cup?
Very. He was very impressive. Like you didn't see it coming, but at the same time, like the thing that surprised me most of all was the price, because on what we'd seen of him, you thought, well, this is going to be a 33 to 1 shot, but I think he was 18 to 1 when he crossed the line, which I was really surprised about. But look, Gordon, as Elliot has said, look, he's a very smart horsey leader. Winner pull up was his quote to the owner before the race. Well, look, there's only one Gold Cup. And I think if he was mine, I'd let him take his chance in the race. And as Ruby has highlighted, there's no real pace on here. You imagine driving the train up near the front end in a Gold Cup. It'll be a decent sized field in this. And space will be at a premium. Mistakes will be multiplied, and you could get caught out at the wrong time. What this horse has is a little bit of tactical pace. He could be really interesting. I think Protectorat, he looked so good. The worry with him was the trip at Aintree. Well, like Bridget Andrews rode him. She could hardly hold him all the way around. And I kept thinking, right, he's going to get beat. And he didn't. He absolutely hosed up And like he beat Dower Stairs that day as well. So he's really interesting. He wouldn't be the first horse to get beat in a Paddy Power. Long Run got beat in a Paddy Power when I thought he was the biggest certainty of all time. Protectorat finished behind Midnight Shadow. He's definitely interesting because he hasn't been in that mix before. But Galvin is solid, and I think that's the reason he's favoured. He's been to the Cheltenham Festival a couple of times. He's won a National Hunt Chase, second in a handicap round there. You know what you're going to get with Galvin. He's solid. So I think for that reason he's been favoured. I'd be just really interested to get the guys' take on Tornado Flyer. Third in the Ryanair last year. He's a King George winner. Surely he'll be ridden cold, and he's one. He's going to be running on at the end. Is he not a good price to be placed in a race like this with that King George in the bag?
He could be, Mick. He seems to be in great form at home. But I think he was just given a brilliant ride in the King George and ultimately ended up winning. I think Danny got the fractions spot on, and not sure anybody else did. I just thought that was the ride more so than the horse. And I think he has to improve a little myself. He's unproven at the trip as well.
And the lack of pace, Ruby, you say it may not fall back on top of those who are ridden that cold, perhaps?
No, but then could also suit horses that are able to quicken, Tommy. So look, Tornado Flyer, as Mick says, was placed in a Ryanair, so he has the gears to be involved in that kind of race. Maybe he could quicken off a slower pace where some of the other horses won't be able to, but I don't know. What's the last winner to drop that for Synchronise, I suppose, came from well out the back to win a Gold Cup, but
and Lord Windermere.
Yeah. Don't think this is Lord Windermere's race now.
No.
Mick, just I'd be interested to get your view on Chantry House as well.
Yeah, he actually jumped this morning. Jumped really, really well. Like the horse that won the Cotswold Chase will not win the Gold Cup. He needs to be better than that. And I think he's in very good form. Like he looked bright as a button this morning schooling. So lots of positives there. But he needs to up his game from what we saw of him in the Cotswold Chase. Like that was a very, very laboured performance. And he needs to be better than that to win. The only thing he has got in his favour is he won the Marsh Chase last year and he went on and won at Aintree. So, he was one of the few UK trained winners last year at the Cheltenham Festival. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and look, he beat a 10-year-old Santini the last time, who's with Polly Gundry now. But at the same time, it is a prep run. I think he can probably run a good race. Gary, have you a strong opinion on the Gold Cup?
Well, just a Plutar, I think, is the one they'll have to beat, Tommy. And if Conflated does pitch up, he'd be next best for me. Manella Indo, I just have a doubt about him and what I've seen this season. That was a step in the right direction last time, but I think he'll need a fair bit more than that if he's to win again.
I think I'm the same boat as you. I think it's quite a big step from that. Lads, let's move on to very quickly the Fox Hunters. But Ruby, I'm just interested here. Billaway, he's been runner up in the last couple. Can he make a third time lucky? I think he can. Hopefully,
probably wear headgear. Maybe that'll help him, Tommy. But he has something has to bring about a bit of improvement. Maybe the headgear will.
The Mare's Chase, lads, is a good contest this year. I think Ellie May was maybe a shade of lucky last year. Maybe she'd beaten by a better mare. Mount Ida produced one of the most remarkable performances at last year's festival. You've Concertista, who has options over hurdles and over fences next week. It's a good race. Gary, have you fancy in that?
I don't know whether I have a fancy, Tom. I agree with you. It's stacking up well. I think Concertista still has the option of the Mare's Hurdle as well. So the final makeup of the field is unclear. I think you're right what you say about Ellie May. She probably was the best horse last year. Just got continuously impeded by Colreevy jumping across her. She's coming into it on the back of a nice confidence booster at Naas last time. Mount Ida's looked a better mare this season, but it's just kind of hard to get out of the back of your mind what she did in the Kimura last year. And if she were to do something similar this time around, she'd have no chance against these.
Yeah, Ruby, will he make any idea? I know. Will he leave it the last second? Concertista, will she run over hurdles?
I don't know, Tommy. Tell you the truth, I think the cheek pieces definitely have improved Ellie May though, and I think she's a great chance.
Yeah, I think she's potentially one of the best of the week for me. Mick, do you have a strong opinion on that?
Yeah, look, Gary's hit the nail on the head with Mount Ida. If you want to remind yourself where she came from, in last year's Kim Muir. Like, she was tailed off and had no chance of winning. That was over 3 mile too. You know, dropping back to this with these mares, you know, she cannot afford to miss a beat, and that would be the concern. I just think Ellie May, a lot of people couldn't believe she got beat last year, and she did, but I think this could be her turn.
Yeah, I think it looks a great opportunity for her. Hopefully she'll convert. She was a bit unlucky last year. Lads, all we have left really is to talk about, and it's only going to skip over if somebody has a fancy. A lot of handicaps in it. The Martin Pipe was won in fierce impressive fashion last year by Gallop in the Champ. Is there one of those there this year, Ruby?
Don't think so, Tommy. I don't know where Stateman runs, whether he runs an novice or a handicap. He looks to have a nice mark of 141 if he was to run in a handicap, but I don't know which one.
Yeah, Gary, have you had? We'll go maybe just to, lads, your best bet for the week, and maybe if you have something in the handicaps that you might like. Gary, you go first.
Yeah, I suppose my best bet would be in one of the handicaps, Tommy. I think Sire de Burley, with Rob James taking 7 off his back, has to have a huge chance of winning a third per temps. I think he's £4 higher than when he won the last time. So when the £7 claim comes off, that brings him back down that few pounds below that last winning mark. And I certainly don't think he's deteriorated too much in the meantime. He was placed in the Stayers Hurdle last year. He's had a light campaign this year, qualified in the Warwick race, just like he did when he won it before. So he's got a huge chance for me in the Pertemps. Gordon Elliott's got real strength and depth in that, but I think he might maybe just be the class act of the race. The horse we were talking about earlier on, Schoolboy Hours, has got a great chance. And another of JP's, if he pitched up, would be the Devil's Coachman. I think if he runs, it'll probably be in the county hurdle, but I was impressed by him when he won the Boyne hurdle at Navan last time.
I have it in my head for years that the Pertemps was the most difficult race of the entire festival, and if we could get a horse to win it 3 years in a row, it would be a remarkable training performance. Mick, your maybe best bet and maybe something for a handicap?
Yeah, look, I think my best bet is Edward Stone in the Arkle on the opening day. I think he's got a very strong chance. I think he's a very worthy favourite. And I think in the handicaps, I really like Alan King's filly, the Glancing Queen, in that Paddy Power plate. It was quite interesting. I was at the weights unveiling at Cheltenham, and Alan King was having a conversation with the handicapper. He was going to run her in this mare's chase. And the handicapper said, look, you know, you're very badly off, and novices have a reasonable record in that plate. So you look at her, you know, her last run at Cheltenham, she finished second to L'Homme Pressé. I thought that was a really solid run. And I think, you know, she's not badly handicapped. I think she's 139, I think. And I think she's around there. So she's definitely worthy of a look in that plate.
Yeah, she's around about 9-1, a nice bit of value. Ruby, your best bet maybe and something for a handicap for us?
There's so many obvious ones, Tommy, with they're too short that you could throw out, but I think at a price, Silette Tomp and the Triumph is a great bet. And in a handicap, yeah, if Stateman was to run in one of the handicaps, I think he'd have a massive chance.
Yeah, look, lads, we'll wrap it up here. We've done about an hour and a half. I think we've gone through most of the certainly the more important races next week. We touched on some of the handicaps. Thanks again to Ruby Walsh, to Mick Fitzgerald, and to Gary O'Brien for your input. And thank you to you for watching the Irish Examiner 2022 Cheltenham Festival preview.
They're coming down the line.